Like we can actually talk opposite each other. We don't have to look at each other through the screen. I think we can do that as well.
Yeah. We analyzed 26,000 prompts, and here's what we found.
Someone typed okay as their, that was it. Like the entire prompt, it was okay. They just went, I don't know what anyone is supposed to do with that. That sounds like my son, giving him a response to something. And we had another one who wrote, repair my code in Spanish. So we found that 8.8% of our users are actually pasting the exact same 400-word prompt that they got from a template generator. We pulled the real data and we're going to talk about it today.
So I have read through so many of the prompts, and some of them are really good.
Yeah.
Some of them are actually talking to Airo AI Builder as if it's their personal assistant. Like I saw someone telling them, "Good job, Airo. Continue doing that." It was one of my favorite sessions. Just want to talk about good prompts versus bad prompts.
Yeah.
What makes a bad prompt? What makes a good prompt? I want to start by one-word prompts, and believe it or not, a lot of people do write one-word prompts. It's like okay, or fix my code, and that's it, or fix this, or just some angry prompts like, why aren't my images uploading? And the thing is, people don't understand that the agent or the LLM doesn't know which image you're referring to and doesn't understand where do you want to upload it.
I mean, I think it comes with a level of knowledge, in terms of what do you write. I try you're giving someone directions. You have to look at it from what are the real life scenarios that you can use to explain it. And I think it's a knowledge gap. So someone who's writing, why is my image not uploading? Clearly they expect the agent to be able to understand the context.
Yeah.
But I think what we miss as basic users is the fact that you need to give the instructions. It's almost, think of it as a coffee machine. You need to give it the directions or context to say, I want to have a macchiato, or I want to have an Americano. If you don't tell them if you don't tell the machine what kind of coffee, or the barista what kind of coffee you want, you're likely not going to end up with the coffee that you want to have. So I think it's the same. But when we look at this journey of AI, I suppose the question is, looking at the general public or any small business, is it surprising to think that they come in thinking it can do everything, or thinking that they're going to have a conversation and it's going to actually just understand what the person means off the bat? I think that's more the fundamental question that we're getting at. I'm not that surprised that somebody writes that question, because they don't know the answer themselves. Yeah. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. And I think about it in the same way that we use cursor and the idea of context. If the agent or the LLM knows the context of what you're talking about, the quality of the end product is so much better than no context. And this is where, most of the time, people are like, oh, I got this wrong, or I don't like the output. And I'm like, what context did you give it? When you say upload this image, you have to say, where do you want it to be uploaded? Instead of, I want to say, consuming your credits on just angry prompts. Yeah. And sometimes agents, they want to make you happy. I don't know how to explain it. Think of it as, and there was this very funny reel where you're asking ChatGPT, I'm about to cheat on my girlfriend, tell me something about it. And he's like, good question. This is a test to your relationship to see how solid it is.
There's a large ethical debate that goes around, what you can ask, and just in general, the agents wanting to validate and support what you've said. I think there's that tendency. But if we go back to the core, what is the purpose here? When we think about in the context of the Airo AI Builder, it is a builder essentially. And I think the first distinction to make is you have to know what your objective is to get out of it, and then move into context. And I do, I think it's a common mistake, because I actually had a discussion with one of my husband's employees the other day, and he's like, oh, I tested your Airo AI Builder and I asked it to check the RFP. I'm like, dude, no, it doesn't do that. It's not, that's not what it's designed to do. That's a very different system that you need to build. And so when I say that, he's like, oh, really? Yeah. It's just to build and create an app or a website or something else. So start with that, and then you can look how you integrate it. So I think that's important in terms of setting expectation. But then, to your point, how do we break it up into like writing good prompts. And then there's also the credit discussion. So there are two things to this in terms of, to get the outcome that you desire or the result that you desire, you have to communicate. And this actually goes right, I remember right back when, this AI wave started getting really popular and people were exploring. There was a podcast that I listened to, and it wasn't about AI, but it was about the impact of AI on the creative industry. And they were talking about, this was probably a year ago or a year and a half ago now, but they were talking about the skills that are going to be prominent. It's really, and I think we continue to see this, in terms of emotional intelligence, in terms of communications, but they said it's going to be communications, because you have to know how to write the right instructions to then be able to get the result that you want. So the better you're able to articulate that, the better your output is going to be, because you're giving that the guardrails. And so I think that's number one. But then to your point, then you have the credit consumption, and it's a little bit like data usage. When you're too young for this, but when the internet started, we used to have a certain quota of hours that you had online. Or even if you look at, last week I was traveling, and I had my local SIM, like my local eSIM, and then I had my Dubai one, but they're in two separate phones. And I go running in the mornings, and I don't want to use my local phone there because I have everything on my iPhone. And I was just like so engrossed in the beauty of like the Esplanade, and like, I want to share a photo on Instagram. And I used all my roaming data in like 2 days because I was too, overzealous in sharing it. It's a little bit of the same context or the same example to say, like, if you are not cautious in when and how you prompt, you're going to end up burning through the credits because you're not thoughtful in doing it. It isn't this unlimited currency. There is something that goes into it. There's a compute there. And I think because when things are intangible, it's also difficult for people to understand that there's a consumption process behind it. And it is a different way of building. And it is a new way of building versus where we were before.
No, exactly. And I think people that come from like a WordPress background or a drag and drop website builder background, once they try this type of builders, it's, I don't want to say harder, but it's more challenging to be adapted to the idea of you get charged per request. And speaking of articulating yourself better, another thing that we're seeing people do is actually using a master prompt from another AI tool. So someone would go to Claude, ChatGPT and say, and like we would see it, like they copy and paste the whole thing. So it starts with master prompt for website build. And then between brackets, this is real, Claude. And then create a clean, modern, mobile-friendly website, so-and-so. Not saying that this is a bad thing to do. Sometimes I do the same thing. I would go to like Cursor, Claude, and ask it to help me with articulating myself better. But you get like a 400-word master prompt output, and you paste the whole thing, but the instructions are meant for... Yeah, exactly. So instead of doing that, remove that first part, the master prompt Claude, and create a clean, modern website for my consulting business. I need a homepage, about page. This is a better way, because the agent is going to read through that the first few sentences, and they're trying to do they will try to do something with it, basically.
I do it too. And I think the example that's probably good to speak to here is when I did a presentation a couple of weeks ago, and I used Cursor to create the context, but I didn't do it in a way of a master prompt. I was very clear to say, I'm going to put this in Airo AI Builder. This is what it is. This is what I want you to do. I want a layout with this many slides, and here are my talking points. Do a watered down version of this that is going to fit as text on the slide, and then we will come back and do the talking points tied to that. So then what I was able to do is work between because Airo AI Builder is not going to give me the talking points for my presentation, but it's going to do the design for me. And so I was very conscious in having the initial prompt and then having the slide by slide content, and I was able to do it one by one. But I was, again, it's the same thing in terms of giving the right context to both tools. So in Cursor, I set the expectation of this is the exercise and process that I'm going to go through. So give me what I need to make this tool work. And then I'm going to come back to you to do it. And I think that's the bridge or the connect I'm missing. And it's unfair, just to defend, let's say that, again, the average user or someone who's not engaged with AI and agents like we are on a daily basis. we have to be very conscientious that they don't know and we shouldn't expect them to know. So it's really about, us having this conversation here to say, this is how you need to do it. So if we go back to, let's look at some of the data that we had a look at, and let's talk about maybe the evolution from a template-based build to a conversation-based build. Templates, why were they popular? Because they made the internet, they made website building and presence building on an online presence possible for a lot of people who didn't know how to code, who found WordPress too challenging. Now, I suppose the question is, are we seeing that from starting from this prompting exercise and this kind of universe, is that in itself a challenge for some of the entrepreneurs that are not super tech savvy? Because they're, to your point, they're used to editing within a very static interface, and that doesn't require fun. So there's the behavioral aspect, and then there's the prompt aspect.
Yeah.
What do you think about that?
So the conversation to from a prompt to a build is so powerful for some people, because also starting with a drag and drop, it's not the easiest thing. You have to learn a lot of where do I find this? How do I do that? How to match the colors all over my website, because sometimes you change the text or the font in one place and then it's not done at the rest of the website, versus when you do it through a conversation, the changes happen across the website. So it could be easier for certain people, but you can also take it and build something very complex. I'll read another prompt that was very fun. Build me a website exact same as Amazon. And it's very ambitious, but this is where people think that through a conversation, they can build something as powerful and as massive and as complicated as Amazon is, which is amazing. But also, this comes Amazon was not built with 150 credits and not even 500 credits. So you have to think about the scale of what you're trying to build, how much time it would have taken you with a drag and drop or hiring an agency or even trying to do it yourself with WordPress, HTML, whatever the tools are, versus doing it through a conversation. There will be a lot of back and forth, but you can build something very simple, but also something super powerful. But you have to be a little bit realistic about what you want to build and how many credits it could take.
It's classic learn to walk before you can run, isn't it?
Yeah.
In that aspect. I mean, I don't want to kill anyone's ambition. Go dream big, championing them. I agree with your point in terms of it's complex to build these things. But again, I'm still optimistic in saying at least it's more accessible now than it has ever been before. But again, it's just having the right steps in place. What about as we look at I'm just looking at some of the other notes that we have in terms of observations from the data.
We can talk about long prompts versus short prompts and what is better, because this is also very I struggle with this. Whether should I start with a long prompt, a short prompt? And you've tried Airo Builder recently where you give it a short prompt, but then it asks you follow-up questions, which is something I really like. I was doing a versus competitor challenge yesterday, and competitors don't really do that. They don't ask you in-depth questions about it. Goes ahead and it builds something for you, which can be good in some cases. But I think what I like about Airo Builder is that even if you give it a short prompt that is not detailed, it asks you.
But that's the layer that we as GoDaddy build over and develop over the top of just the AI agent. I mean, if you look at our position, we've been around for over 20 years. So we know the journey that a small business or entrepreneur has to go on to be able to get up and running. When you have that experience, when you have that our own context and 20 million customers that are trying to do that on an everyday basis, I think we are very conscientious in how do we guide the customer to inputting the right content to be able to get what they want. We want to make sure they're getting closer to their end result and end outcome, the vision in their head, to be able to start quicker. So, I think I'm really happy that we're continuing to develop in this way. It is something that it's our mission. It's our global mission. So that's obviously what we're working towards. But the difference between a short and a long prompt, I think it comes more down to structure. If your long prompt is really well structured, and provides instructions to get you to that end result or vision that you have, then that may be sufficient, and you have to test it.
Yeah.
Versus then having one by one. But you may also have a long prompt and then do it step by step, because if you think about a process and a flow, with Airo AI Builder, if you put in a 10-part process and you're not happy with one step in between, then you're going to stall the process as you go at the build process. So I think there's no wrong or right answer here, but I do think it's knowing that each use case differs. And so understanding what your end vision is and where you want to get to and what is the best way to get there, and kind of mapping that out. I mean, everything I say to my son, you're doing something, you need to have a plan first. If you don't have a plan, you can put whatever you want on a page and look at it. It turns out not super good quality, in the most polite way. But it's the same here. When you start something, ultimately you are building something. You don't go and build a house without having a design in mind. You don't start and go, whoops, I laid one brick too many here, and then you have to demolish the wall. Thankfully, much easier and cheaper to demolish something in the digital world. So, there's more margin of error than in a physical space, but it's still the same principle. If you don't have a plan, it's likely that you're going to run off course.
Yeah. And speaking of plan, I don't know if you tried, like yesterday, I tried Airo Builder, and it has this new function where when you ask it to do something, it gives you a plan. So it's like step 1, step 2, step 3, and it goes through the plan. I really like that. And I'm hoping, and I did talk to the team about adding a planning mode where you talk to the agent first and plan together what you want to do with the site. And then once you're happy with the plan, you're like, go execute on my plan. Because I think they have it in Cursor. There's a plan mode in Cursor, which I really enjoy sometimes when I have a very big task that I want to tackle in like steps and break down. And I think this is something that if we bring to Airo AI Builder, it's going to be super helpful to a lot of people, especially building very complex websites. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's a really good observation. And people who know what they want to build, they have come in and planned it anyway. Again, it goes back to what are we trying to do and how are we trying to support people to get and guide people to the right build. I think if we talk about a builder in the true sense of what is a builder, how do we define a builder, an AI builder? It is an agent that helps you build. It's not an agent that does the build for you in the sense of like it's a 1-2, it's like an enter and then you get the input output. It doesn't work like that. It is a process. So I think that planning, and I love that step by step because it verifies, it's basically saying, this is what I've heard you tell me. Am I interpreting it correctly? Yeah. Or here are some additional points that would really help you make the right decision. And it's actually not that far from where we started. I remember years and years ago when we first launched just a standard website builder. This was back, I think, now in 2017. And we were doing a lot of like workshops. And I remember we talked to a entrepreneur. She was running a cafe, and we took her through a demo build, and we had an event space, like you could do invitations, you have a calendar integrated. I think there were online appointments. And her reaction was, I didn't know about these use cases. So now seeing actually what's being built because of just the features that we had within the website builder, the static website builder, she said, now I have more ideas about how I can, bring in the community and advertise my events and bring it into my online ecosystem, which I'd always thought of a website as just a static, separate page. And it's an evolution of that process. The delivery and the packaging is different, but the functionality and I suppose what we're trying to do for the customer, for the entrepreneur, is still very much the same thing. We're trying to enable them to do more with their business so they can grow. And it, over time, I think it will get much easier as people understand those use cases, but we continue to have to give them the context and prompt the customer. It's a two-way prompting process. So they truly get value out of the agent. It should be a partner for them. It should be a builder.
Exactly. And I know that we mentioned some like funny examples and some like, I don't want to say bad, but just some wrong examples of how to prompt. But I do have a couple of like good examples that I actually want to read through. Someone says, I need a website built for bocaspotlight.com. I hope I'm pronouncing your domain name correctly. I provide a direct shared mail service that highlights local businesses in Boca Raton. I need a homepage, a section explaining how the service works for businesses, pricing tiers, and a contact form. What do you think?
I like it.
Yeah.
I think it's well thought. It's not too detailed, so it doesn't overcommit to the build. But at the same time, there's a clear outline of this is what I want. So it's a blueprint. I think the customer will get a good blueprint and then can customize as they go.
Exactly. One thing to note here is that when you tell the agent, I want pricing tiers, the agent is going to go ahead and make up placeholders, and it's going to add prices because it wants to make it beautiful and as if it's ready for you to use. So it's going to come up with the price, like the tier name, what the tier is going to include, and how much it's going to cost. If you want to ahead of time, like this is one thing that I would do maybe a little bit differently. If I do know what my pricing tiers are, I have a name for them, I know what they include, I know how much they cost, I would tell the agent ahead instead of it going and building something out and then going back and then I would have to change it.
But I'm going to make a distinction here. There are two. You can do it your way, or you can say build the blueprint. So at the end of that, you can say build the blueprint first, and then I will give you the plans and the pricing. Because again, what happens if in the initial build, you load in all the information about the plans and the pricing, but you don't like the page or you don't, So I would still probably break it down. But, I suppose the improvement there is to say like phase one. So going back to that idea of you've got steps in the process, you would say, I want my initial blueprint. This is step one. And then I'm going to give you the pricing and the tiering and the plan if you have it ready.
I like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's interesting. I wonder if we can do that in the next episode and try both ways and see which one works. One other thing that I thought about, and I just want to make sure that people know about it, is that there's also within Airo AI Builder, you can edit the text and upload images, replace images without credits, because people, I don't want to say waste credits, but they use up their credits on like changing the text or uploading an image, replacing an image. Meanwhile, they can do it without credits and actually save those credits for like bigger changes that they want to do.
Do we have a help video on how to do that?
We do.
Okay. So we link it into the video, link it into the podcast episode, because I think, people, they care about visuals. So, and it's fun. Like I probably I did a lot of image editing on the presentation because I was able to talk about like the degree of transparency that I wanted on the slide format. So I was able to have like the text as the hero, but then have a little bit of a transparent image as an overlay on the right-hand side of the slide layout. But obviously, you have to prioritize and you do hit a credit limit. So it's good to have those little hacks in terms of how you save data. Like listening to Spotify on offline mode when you download music.
I have one more, which is like quite interesting. This is like another use case where we're seeing people migrate or rebuild their site when they're unhappy with. And I'm really loving a lot of the before and after. So we have this like little site that we have.
The reveal. Here's what it was before. And here's
I don't know if I told you that my husband did that for his own website. Yeah. So he built his own website. I think was with Webflow or I think with like HTML. Yeah. And then I was like, why don't you try Airo AI Builder? And he was like, I saw the before and after and I was like, wow, this is 10,000 times better. Yeah, because it's like more consistent. The design was more sleek, more beautiful. So I love this use case of like rebuilding, like trying out to rebuild your website. And you can give it a link, like the URL of your original site, and it's going to try to capture the information, the images, and rebuild it.
I don't do mine. So I've got mine and it's again with an older GoDaddy product, but I don't have the time. So for me, when you again look at the use cases, I just don't have the time to continuously go in and, upload the content in the control panel. I love the builder because I can just go in and basically enter the text or the instruction for what I want to update. But I tried the site import maybe 3 months ago. So I want to do another trial and see how much the product has come in, the past like two to 3 months. And then I was testing it and I was being quite, I think, critical. And I didn't upload any of the images. I was like, pull the image from my existing website. And
Hmm.
it did it. It took a while. It took a couple of tries,
So,
but then it landed on the right image and I gave it very little context at first. I was like, I'm going to test you. But it is, again, it's the opportunity that people have to improve what they have already without the heavy lift. I think like migrating a website or rebuilding a website has been traditionally such a heavy lift.
yeah.
I think, if we go back to the main topic of this being prompts, do you want an exact replica or do you want an improvement? And I think for most people, it's probably an improvement, but then how do you go best through that? I think this is probably a good topic for us to take we need to try it and then see what is the best way to do it. But if you want to start with like the baseline is your existing website and then you want to improve, you have to do a little bit of an analysis there to say, this is what I like about it. Here's the URL. This is what I like about it. This is what I want to keep. And then this is what I want to upgrade. And so these are the new features that I want to have. And if it's text, then you also go through that. And I found that Airo AI Builder is quite good in taking the text. I did actually a couple of weeks back, I just tried a random website in English and then I asked it to translate it into Turkish. And I read the Turkish and I was like, make it more marketing type language. And it did it. I updated it in like 2 minutes max. I think it was probably 30 seconds. Let me not exaggerate. But it was able to get the tone and it made a huge difference. So those small changes, what would have taken hours because you have to translate, you have to QA it, actually can be done in a snap of your fingers. And I think that's the power. But again, you have to know what you want. Like if you don't know what you want, you can't expect the AI to solve it for you.
Do it for you.
Agent to solve it for you. You need to know what you want.
I'll wrap up the episode with one thing that I've done with prompting before, and I did it in Airo AI Builder. So after I built like my full website, I went and I told Airo AI Builder, help me brainstorm 10 ideas to make this website better. And it came up with 10 ideas. And it was like, which one would you like me to start with? This one is better. I would recommend doing this first. So I think also just like my last thing with prompting, try to push Airo AI Builder to tell you what to do and use it as, if you have enough credits, as your personal assistant to help you make your website better and QA the website for you. Like quality check, all the buttons are working. Like you can just ask it to do things like this for you and it would do it for you. So
I love that.
yeah.
Like use your credits wisely, but be smart about how you prompt and use the tool. Like don't expect it. It is a builder. It is your friend. It is your friendly building partner. So use it like that. Have a conversation, but make sure you drive the conversation in the right direction.